This is 1059 The Region, where parents talk and explore practical, proactive, and evidence-based solutions. This is Where Parents Talk with Lianne Castelino.
Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Lianne Castelino, and this is Where Parents Talk, where we look at parenting topics through the lens of science, evidence, or lived experience. On today's show, participation levels in organized sports in North America have been trending downward in recent years, even before the arrival of COVID-19. What's contributing to fewer kids registering to play at the grassroots level, and how can the overall experience of organized sport be improved? Our guest today is working to address those very questions. He has spent much of his life around sport as a gifted athlete, a franchisor for more than 20 years, and a serial entrepreneur. Matt Young has worked with organizations from amateur sport and the professional leagues to Olympic athletes across several countries. He's also the founder of FSQ Sport, whose mission is to help sport organizations provide quality experiences for all stakeholders. Matt Young joins us today from North Vancouver, BC. Great to have you. Thank you for being here.
Lianne, thanks so much for having me on.
Matt, there are many reasons for declining registrations in youth sport, including access and cost. Now, in recent years, abuse scandals, coaching practices, fan behavior have dominated headlines, adding further fuel. So when you look at the big picture, what is your assessment of the current state of youth organized sport in Canada?
Let's start with recognizing that there are a lot of people doing good things in youth sport in our country. It's not fair to lump them in all the time. We only hear about a lot of the bad things. Having said that, those people that are doing good are not the norm. They seem to be the exception. And the norm is poor. We're not providing equal access to sport for kids. We see sport leaving our school system, where that's where the most amount of young people get introduced to sport. We see community sport that's not being run very well. It's being run by people who lack business experience and lack leadership experience. And we seem to have kind of, that's the way we've always done things attitude towards sport in a time where things are changing daily and the needs are much more than they might have been last week, last month, and last year. And, probably the most alarming thing is we really lack that courageous leadership that says, okay, sport has made a pivot, and youth and amateur sport have made a pivot from what their original intention was to becoming bigger business. And we have not wrapped our arms around putting guardrails up or having some accountability and governance around that. And I think it lends itself to a really dangerous precedent.
How would you describe the fundamental purpose of organized youth sports?
Well, in the early days, it was actually to prepare people to be physically active and healthy for war. And then it kind of went to the Industrial Revolution. So we needed to be healthy and active for sport. And then, it became a nice to have additional, with education, it became something that we really understood the whole mind-body connection. So it became something much bigger than, the showcase tournament on the weekend or the standing the score in the schedule.
To chart a path forward, it's important to understand the history. How would you go about summarizing how we got here?
Yeah, very simply, I think we have not looked at this through a design perspective, what's coming up. We're not proactive, and that's just human nature. We're not proactive in seeing what are some of these gaps. If we do X, what will happen in Y, etc. So we react. And when we react, it forces us to put the toothpaste back in the tube and the genie back in the bottle, which is infinitely harder than actually sitting down and saying, okay, we really need to look at this. It's as you said at the outset, it's $1 billion business running with no CEO. What other organization would we tolerate that in? None. So I think we need to move away. How do we get here? We've continued to default to the way we've always done things in a time where change happens rapidly.
You are listening to Where Parents Talk on 1059 The Region. I'm Lianne Castelino in conversation with Matt Young, sports business entrepreneur, discussing ways to improve the experience within the amateur organized sports arena. Matt, there's so many players in this equation, literally and figuratively, coaches, trainers, parents, at the grassroots level. How would you describe the role of a parent if their child is playing an organized sport?
Well, the role of the parent is to be the biggest cheerleader, number one, whether it's good times or bad times, in victory or defeat. And they really have to understand that this is a journey for their kid, and this is not a journey that is going to be, the span of a season. This is a 5 to 10 year journey. This is where the kids are going to learn a lot more about the standing than just the standing, the score, and the schedule. We've got winning, losing, we've got feedback, communication, roles, and responsibilities. So it's really incumbent that the parents understand that this is a journey that's about much more than what's right in front of them. And they really have to separate themselves from looking on the social media or worrying about what the Joneses are doing, and really understand what needs or is sport serving for their own kid, and then educate themselves with best practice, with communication, with understanding what this is all about and how to be that best support. Sometimes it's going to require them to speak up when they see things that are not jiving with what they believe should be the experience. And sometimes it's going to mean that they have to seek to understand and stand down while their kids go through these experiences. I mean, we're all going to come across not great coaches or leaders or teammates through our lives. Youth and amateur sport are the perfect opportunity for us to experience that, where there's very low consequences. So let's let our kids work through those consequences. Let's give them the tools to say, hey, listen, if there's a problem, we're here to help you, but we're not here to do it for you. This is not our go around. It's your opportunity.
You've been around sports in different aspects for decades. Could you provide examples of some of the questionable behavior that you've witnessed?
Yeah, I think the most obvious is the abuse. So I have seen a lot of player abuse. I've seen a lot of official abuse, a lot of coach abuse, even a lot of administration abuse. I think we think that it's our right to just say what we want and behave how we want. And that's not true. We have to be very mindful of that. I think that's obviously the worst case scenario, but even more subtly, parents not understanding how the kids are so tuned into not only what they say, but their body language, how they react to a loss, how they react to adversity, how they react to hearing the news that their neighbor has been selected to participate at a higher level of sport than they are. How do they react to that? What are their responses to that? And I think that's an unconscious incompetence on the parent side, not knowing that their kids are really tuned into how they're reacting and will become like them and will adjust their emotions up or down based on what they're seeing from their parents. And that can really positively and adversely affect their performance. So I think that that's probably what we see the most in the parents is just relaxing. And again, I go back to that journey. It's a long journey. So just sit back and enjoy it and understand that there's no possible way that every single kid on every single team is going to score, or every single time kids play a sport, they're going to win every game. It's just not realistic. So I think we have to kind of really ground ourselves in reality and enjoy the moment.
We live in a very competitive world. The inherent nature of sport is competitive. How can a parent better manage that competitiveness in themselves before potentially projecting it onto their young athlete?
Well, Lianne, that's a great question, and that's why I found you. I don't have all the answers for that. I would like to know that, because we were talking on a podcast a couple of weeks ago as when did that start and how do we manage it? And I really don't have an answer for how we manage that, because it's such a pervasive topic, and it's such a emotionally charged, deeply rooted psychological. I've heard it termed as it's well intentioned but misplaced. It's out of love, but it's doing the exact opposite. So I'm not really sure how you talk to parents about that, because you can have conversations after conversation after conversation. There are things that you can do, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, coming up. But when it comes down to it, it's a really personal connection between parent and child. And I get it. The parents want to see their kids succeed all the time. They want to see their kids having fun. They do not want to see their kids in situations where they might fail. I understand that, but I'm just not sure how we share and parlay outside of continuing to message it that there is a lot of success from failure. There are a lot of success from being quiet. There are a lot of moments where we just sit back and let it play out instead of jumping in to intervene.
More to come on Where Parents Talk. We will be back after the break.
Want to learn more about the show? Email info@whereparentstalk.com. Stick around. Lianne Castelino and Where Parents Talk will be right back on 1059 The Region. Welcome back to Where Parents Talk. Listen live at 1059theregion.com. Here's Lianne Castelino.
Welcome back. I'm Lianne Castelino, and this is Where Parents Talk. Our guest is Matt Young, and we're talking about the organized sports journey for participant, parent, and others. Matt, in your journey, you also bring the perspective of being a dad of athletes yourself. How have you managed that within your own household, watching your kids play at different levels of sport?
Well, full disclosure, I did it the wrong way. And quickly learned that it was the wrong way. It was a situation where we were in the changing room, and I was putting on my eldest's pair of skates, and I think he was 5 or 6, and he asked in front of everybody, "Dad, are you going to say the F word if I don't do X, Y, or Z again today?" And everybody looked at me, and I had to look at myself and say, "You know what? You're right. That's not the behavior that we want." So then I immerse myself in, how do I become that partner? How do I become that cheerleader? How do I become the best support for the kids? And it quickly changed to, listen, we don't care about the outcome. We don't care about, it's not our journey, it's your journey. And we're here to support it. And we educated ourselves on what to say, what not to say, how to behave, how not to behave. And, at the end of it, I found myself being the only person standing on one side of the arena while the entire team was standing on the other side. And when people asked me why, I just said, I'm not interested in a critique and play-by-play of every single kid on the team every time they play. I just want to come here and watch my kid play. I've already had my sporting experience. This is time for them to have their sporting experience. So, I think there is value. I think everybody does it. I know what those feelings are. I know how they come about, but I think it's a choice that you make on what the expectation is for yourselves and how that parlays to your kids.
Not everyone is going to have that level of self-awareness to say, I've got to change my own behavior. So do you believe there might be an opportunity for training parents whose kids play a sport?
Yeah, no question, Lianne. And I always advise organizations to stay away from words like education, like parent education and coach education. Nobody wants to be educated. But I will share a story. So we were asked to do a parent education meeting and for an organization, and we responded with, is it mandatory, or is it do people get to choose if they want to come or not? They get to choose. Great. Is it one night or 2 nights? It's one night. So we said, okay, we're going to charge you $5,000 for that 1 hour session. And they said, well, that's a little bit pricey. And I go, well, it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of my time. What we will do is, if you invite all of the stakeholders there, so players, parents, someone from the officiating department, coaches, administration, and you give people 2 nights to choose from, because people are usually busy. You make it mandatory, so their kid cannot play that sport unless they come and listen to the vision, the mission, the values, the goals and objectives of the organization, of the coach, of the team. Because if we don't do that at the outset and give people the opportunity to say, oh, well, this is okay, I get it, this is for me, this is not for me, then we're just going to be putting out fires every practice, after every game. Why didn't my kid get to play, etc. And the first time we did it with a soccer team. And I was really nervous about what the response from the parents would be. And afterward, because I could see them. First thing we did was we asked kids, "Hey, listen, why do you play this sport?" And of course, they gave us all the answers that we know: fun, friends, fitness, all the things. And then we said to the parents, "How are you supporting what they just said?" And then we asked the parents what they wanted out of the experience, what their expectation was. And we kept going until we heard the word development. And then we dove into that. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to the coaches? And we had a conversation. It was only 25 minutes. We talked about all of the reasons for the decline of participation in sport. We contextualized it for those parents, for that community and organization. And at the end of the 25 minutes, Lianne, there was a lineup of parents like, "Thank you so much. We did not know what we did not know. This has been the most informative parent meeting that we've ever had, where we weren't getting lectured, we weren't getting yelled at. We engaged them." So I like to use the word engagement, parent engagement. Bring them into the process by sharing, by being vulnerable, by highlighting their importance, by giving them some tools. When you see this, do this. If you see this, do this. Come ask me. But again, that, to your point, that really requires self-awareness on behalf of the organization and willingness to do that. And, from what we've seen, if we're not setting that foundation and anchor at the outset in a mandatory preseason meeting for all stakeholders, then we're going to be putting out spot fires the entire season. And it's going to be less enjoyable.
Now, you touched on declining participation. Could you expand on what research you and your organization, FSQ Sport, have uncovered where it concerns organized sport?
The biggest thing about the decline in participation in sport is becoming the cost. When we have these pay-to-play systems, and we've all heard about the pay-to-play systems, the cost for traveling, for the teams, for the gear, trying to keep up with the latest composite sticks or shoes or cleats or what have you. Sport is really, that's what contributes to that $28 billion price tag that is on sports. The hotels, all of that stuff really can be a limiting factor to some kids to participate. So the question is, are we actually seeing our best talent, or are we just seeing the talent that can afford to show up there and participate in all of these events? And it's, obviously the bifurcation of sport. You see it in other areas of our society, but we're really starting to see that in sport. So I think that has definitely contributed to the lack of participation. But the other factors are technology, obviously, kids plugging into technology, the lack of free play, lack of fundamental movement skills, no fun. Kids just aren't having fun. It's a job. They didn't sign up for a job. They want to just go and play with their friends. And we just continue to impose our thoughts on what their sport experience should be, instead of listening to the participants and what they want it to be, which I find really strange. So there's lots of factors that contribute to the decrease of participation, that some we can control and some we can't control, and some that are going to need to be managed. So I think when you look at those different things, you look at the marginalization of physical education in schools, it's a big factor. We're not preparing people to move properly, and if they don't have that foundation, then we don't get to having confident, competent movers, and that has a big impact on sports. So it is a multifaceted problem. I always go back to the elementary school, the high schools, because if the fundamental movement skills and free play aren't happening at home, and they're not happening in the schools, then by the time we're 13, 14, 15, it's almost too late.
How would you go about assessing where we need to be in the short term to improve the participant experience in organized sport?
Well, we need to ask ourselves, are we really serious about developing physically and mentally well-rounded citizens, or is that just a campaign promise or buzzword? We quite frankly, that's what we need to ask. It's not going to happen in a 4-year political cycle. It's got to be something that's long term. And when you look at the countries that have embedded that in the culture, the Scandinavian countries in particular, you can see when you go there, you can see it's part of the culture. It's what we're doing together as families, or after school, or on weekends, or part of the school program. It's embedded in their culture. So, to get back to answer your question, if we do not do that, we're going to continue to see the rise of mental health issues that have started earlier and earlier in life. We're going to continue to see the rise of disease that's from sedentary lifestyles and behavior. We're going to continue to see the rise of drugs and shortcuts and all of the things that people are trying to do to make themselves feel better, that are less work than going out and being active. And there's going to be inherent, flaws with that and downstream effects that we don't know because of that. So I think we have to ask ourselves, are we really serious about creating a culture, whether it's just in our family, whether it's in our community, or whether we don't need to wait for any government on a federal or provincial level to do it. We can start in our own households, but I think we have to ask ourselves what's important.
We talked about a parent's role. How about a coach? What do you believe a coach's main role is when instructing children at a grassroots level?
A great coach is somebody who helps young people believe in themselves. If we go into a room and ask 100 people, who is your greatest coach and why? They will report things like, gave me confidence, believed in me, connected with me at a different level, held me accountable. All traits that come from culture, character, social emotional connection, and confidence. But what do we teach? What do we teach predominantly in our coaching world? We teach technical tactical. So everything we teach is 90% technical tactical, when every time we've done that drill of asking 100 people, we'll see 98 sticky notes on one side and 2 sticky notes that said he or she helped make me run faster or jump higher. So we are missing the mark on how we're coaching coaches. And some coaches are missing the mark on what their role is, in my opinion. It's not about the coach status, and it's really tough as a coach to put your ego aside and understand that the business you're in is development, and we can't just throw the word development on our website and say we're about development if we're not baselining, reevaluating at least mid-season and end of the season, mutually agreed upon development criterion, some which will be from the technical tactical, some which will be from physical, but some need to be from the character, connection, culture, and confidence as well. So I think we're really missing the opportunity as coaches because every team that we've coached, we've actually focused on the individuals, each individual, and our only goal is to finish the season better than you started across these skills. So they're aware of what the skills are, they're aware of what their homework is, which is specific to them. And at the end of the season, instead of walking into a room and saying we're going to win the championship in a league of 100 people where there can only be one winner, so that means 99 losers, we can have 14, 17, 46 winners because we have reframed what it is that we're focusing on, which is the individual's progress over the season. So that way we can create way more wins. And take a guess what happens when you focus on the individual's progress over the season. Guess what happens at the team level? They're more successful.
Where the lines get incredibly blurred is when you have a lot of parents who are also volunteer coaches as well. So what would you say needs to happen in terms of coaching the coach at the grassroots level?
I'm really glad you asked this question. The saying is, just because you're a volunteer doesn't give you license to suck at what you do. And there are a lot of great volunteer programs where there's training programs that are put in place that are mandatory. We just had the 2010 Olympics. The volunteers were exceptional because they had a volunteer training program. We have to park that narrative. And the second thing I want to say, Lianne, is people always say, well, any coach is better than no coach. That's not true. And we're seeing that every single day in the media right now. Qualified coaches need to be qualified. And one of the things that we've started working on is how do we introduce these coaching skills? And if we just take the term coach and we intersperse it with partner, manager, leader, employee, employer, these are all interpersonal relationship skills. Why aren't we teaching these in college and high schools? Why are we still stuck on Shakespeare and learning these things in a day and age where we really need to up the ante on the connection, up the ante on these soft skills with our kids? So I think in the absence of implementing a mandatory leadership program, which would benefit every kid, regardless of what they were taking in schools, the coach, no coach should step on an ice pitch anywhere without having some mandatory training on interpersonal skills. Why are you a coach? Why are we doing what we're doing? What is it that we're doing? And how can we support you in being a great coach? So I think that is absolutely mandatory. I think that it is a mistake. We're going to pay for it. If we don't pay for it at the outset, we're going to pay for it on the other end. You look at the money that's been spent by Michigan State, $500 million. The US OPC, $500 million. Like we're talking big bucks. So you're going to pay one way or the other. Why not be proactive?
You contend that we really need to focus on giving sport back to kids. Take us through some tangible steps that you believe need to be taken to make that happen.
Yeah, well, number one is we talked about it in the TED Talk. Let kids be kids. Let them sort it out. Let them have their free play. Let them enjoy the sport and have all the learnings on their own time. Number two is see something, say something. We're too worried about rocking the boat or being ostracized. We don't want to hurt our kids' chances. Well, if you see something that's untoward to your kid already, they're already being hurt. So step up and say something. That is the responsibility of our parents. And it's not just your kid, it's every kid. If you see something that's not right on your team, because your kids are watching that and other people are watching that. And then I think we have to really look at restructuring our industry. And we said that in the talk. There's just too many fingers in the pot. There's not enough money to go around. There's not enough accountability. Everyone's got their own board with their own thought on what it should be. Some are informed, some are not informed. There's just too many in our Canadian sports system and hierarchy. There's just way too many levels of bureaucracy and nonsense, and that needs to be consolidated in a meaningful way. And we don't have to look far, because we've seen the Scandinavian countries and what they have done. There are no travel teams in Scandinavia. Why would you leave your community to play someone else when we could just develop great things in our own community? I agree with that. You look at Australia, the Cycling Federation reorganized itself from 12 different boards to one board, 11 CEOs to one CEO, and now they have a much more effective system. Number one. Number two, the revenues go directly to the athletes and support the athletes. That's what we should be doing. So somebody does need to come in and overhaul sport. That's going to require a courageous leader. It's not going to be somebody, no offense, that's used to be in the housing portfolio and now they're in the sport portfolio, and next they'll be in the some other different portfolio. It needs someone that's got experience in business and experience in leadership and experience in sport.
Matt Young, entrepreneur and founder of FSQ Sport, thank you so much for taking the time to share your perspective with us today.
Thank you, Lianne. Appreciate it.
And that is our show for this week. Remember, you can always watch the full video interview at whereparentstalk.com. And if you missed any part of today's radio broadcast, you can listen to it on more than 50 different podcast platforms, including at 1059theregion.com.
Sign up for Lianne's parenting newsletter and so much more at whereparentstalk.com. This is Where Parents Talk on 1059 The Region.